Welcome to the studio. In this lesson I'm going to be looking at paper, why we use the paper we do, how we treat that paper so that it's good for painting on. So let's get into it. I've got two pieces of paper down here. This is your normal printer paper, super thin. Normal printer paper, about 80 grams, I think, that one. This is a watercolor paper. It's 140 grams, so it's still a relatively lightweight watercolor paper, but I'm going to show you the big difference. The first thing to do with watercolor paper is to make sure it's taped down or fixed at the edges. So I'm going to tape this lot down. You don't need to watch and hear me do it all, so we'll speed through this bit, but I'm going to tape this paper down, and we'll go from there. Right, so I've taped those two pieces down, and the reason I've taped them down is that it's going to hold your paper flat. If you put lots of water onto paper and it's not taped down at the edges like this, it's really going to buckle, and as it dries, you're going to end up with a really buckled, crinkled kind of piece of paper. So this is going to help it dry flat. It's also going to stop it kind of crinkling up too much while you're painting. So I'm going to put lots of water on this. This side I've got my very just cheap basic printer paper, 80 gram kind of stuff you stick through a laser printer. And this is what not to use. So I'm going to put lots of water down on this, and you'll immediately start to see, well, one thing, there's no texture in this paper. So even if I'm just dragging my brush across, it's a very flat, smooth paper, no texture. It also dries incredibly quickly, so it soaks up water really fast, so it's very difficult to soften edges, and hopefully from that side camera you'll be able to see exactly what's happening with this buckling. And especially if I start putting on another layer, and with watercolors you're always building up layers, so you're going to put on more and more water. If I was trying to work wet in wet with this and drop in more paint, more texture, it's just going to get more and more wrinkled. The other thing is the surface strength of the paper. There's not much sizing in this paper, which is the stuff they kind of use to hold paper fibers together. And very quickly it becomes over wet, and you can start basically just lifting the surface of the paper. So you see, I don't have to brush over this paper much for it to start pulling off the surface of the paper, and you see these little dark lumps, and those are bits of paper wearing off. And if I carry on going like that, if I was trying to lift out an area, you can see these lumps are actual paper coming off. So that paper is basically falling apart. That little bit of work that I've done on it, it's wrinkling up, it's falling apart, it's no good. Don't use it. And I'll show you the difference then. Just pop a little bit more. Yeah, let's use a different colour, shall we? I'm going to go with this alizarin red. And you'll see here I've got a ton of water on here, so the same as this blue side, and I'm just going to dump on loads and loads of water. And one thing you'll notice already straight away is you've got this texture. So where this paint is forming into these or sitting into the texture of that paper, you get the pattern of the paper appearing, and that's something that you'll use in watercolor, is using that texture of the paper just to create highlights and stuff. And if I kind of skip across the page in some drier areas, you'll see that you get this much more effective dry brushing technique. So you can show the highlight. My brush is a little bit too wet to show you that, but if I dry it off, you can use the side just to create these lovely dry brush techniques. And what you'll see that this paper is crinkling up. It's £140 paper, so it's a lightweight watercolor paper. So this is unusable. This is computer paper, not designed for using watercolors. This is a lightweight watercolor paper. So especially important with a lightweight paper to tape it down. And you will see some buckling in here. So you can see the buckling in there. But taping it down is when that dries, it's going to stretch out, and that will actually dry very, very flat. This is probably never gonna get back to its original shape. It's always going to have these bumps in it, and as you can see, it's kind of wearing away. And just, you can see, look, I can actually just, if I did it with my finger, you can see the surface of that paper just starting to disintegrate, essentially. You know, look, this is not going to happen with this. If I rub this, you know, you can see it's much stronger paper. I can work over it in areas. So as I was doing there, you know, I can work over this area quite a lot, and I'm not getting any of the paper coming up from it. So much more durable surface, can take much more paint, much more water. And I'll show you that what we're going to have to do here is kind of speed this up and let them all dry. What I'm going to do is put another piece of paper down. So this is the same paper as I've got on the right hand side here. It's 140 gram watercolor paper, but I'm not going to tape it down. So same again, lots of pigment, lots of paper, lots of pigment, lots of water. And we just put this. And what you find is the wetter, you get some areas that are wet, some areas that are a little bit drier. And what that will do is cause different areas of the paper to expand more than others and shrink more than others. And it's going to crinkle up, and it's never going to dry flat. So you can already see that this sheet of paper, if you're looking at it from the front camera, you see that it's already lifting off the paper there. You know, it's arching up, and that is going to, you know, it creates this edge along here. Your paint's going to run into it. I mean, you've got that in here, you've got these little puddles, but much more pronounced on this, and it's never going to dry flat. So just going to put in a bit more pigment and a bit more paint just to show you really how this is not going to dry flat or even, whereas this one will. So we just let that sit there, dry. It's probably going to take a little while. Just make sure we've got it nice and wet. You can already see, you see how much this is lifting up here. Now to try and paint on that surface is incredibly difficult. It's all over the place. So if I wanted, for example, to do a line over here, you know, you're going to struggle. You miss bits out. There are high points, there are low points. You're going to get water flowing into areas and getting trapped. So I'm not going to sit and make you watch paint dry. So we're going to speed this bit up, let them dry, and then I'll show you exactly what I use. I use a heavier weight paper on a block, and you'll see exactly why once these are dried, and we can compare them. So boom, jump. So I've let these dry for about 10 minutes. They're now completely dry. And what you can see is that this is totally flat. You know, although there was loads of wrinkling even in this one, it's gone totally flat. Taping down has actually helped this paper stay relatively flat as well, even though it is super thin. You can still see there's this buckling, and obviously the thickness of the paper just isn't up to painting with watercolor. Compared to this one, as you can see, you know, this is all bumped up. This is not flat at all. Can't really see it, but once I peel this off, we'll be able to compare how flat each of these are. So just skip through this bit quite quick so you don't have to hear me. So now I've unstuck these, we can lift them up and we can kind of just see how wrinkly they are. You know, this one, hopefully I've convinced you, you're not going to be using kind of cheap, you know, 80 gram paper. So we can kind of just get rid of that The real comparison here, I suppose, is between taping it down and not. And it can be difficult to see, but if you're looking at this from the side angle or the front camera, there's loads of buckling and pitting in the surface of that. It's quite lumpy. You know, if I run my hand across it, I can feel these definite lumps. And actually, if I drag a little piece of water across it, you'll probably be able to, or a brush, and just try and skip, you can see those lumps. A big lump here, big lump here, you know, and it's super uneven, really difficult to paint on. This side is much better. Still a little bit curved up, but the surface, the whole surface is just much smoother. Yeah, hardly any cockling. It's much better. So taping it down makes a big difference. Now what I want to do is just show you how I do it, which is none of these ways really. Generally speaking, I will use a watercolor block. So this is a watercolor block. These are separate sheets of paper, so they call these loose sheets. This is a block, so they call it a watercolor block. And you can see if you look at the edge here from this side camera, it's several sheets. I've actually only got one sheet left on this block. Oh no, there's two there. So you'll see that these are glued on four sides. So effectively what you've got is a pad of paper that is glued around the edges. So although it's like it's been stuck down. So it's like having a piece of paper taped down. Okay, so this paper is much thicker than the paper I used in the example. So this is 140 gram. You can see it's quite thin. Just show you some of the flecks out of this piece of paper. It's like a very thin piece of card. Kind of make that noise. This is, if I actually separate it from this block, which is how you would take it off, just so you can see the texture or the weight of it. You can see that, you know, you get a bit of a wobble board there. This much thinner, much heavier. When that's fixed to your block, it's going to act like that tape around the edges. So it's going to keep your piece of paper perfectly flat. The extra weight of the paper as well is going to stop that initial kind of cockling, they call it. So when the paper bubbles up like that, they call it cockling. So this is going to stop it. And this is the paper that I paint in all my tutorials, all of the videos that you've seen on this channel or on the website. This is the paper that I use. So hopefully that's been helpful to you. Use thick paper, use it on a block. It's going to solve a lot of problems for you. Hope you've gained something from this. If you have, hit the subscribe button, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.